Welcome, everyone. I am Nathan. He is Raymond, and we are the Super Infodump Brothers from another mother.
This is Raymond from 2024. Just letting you know that this episode was recorded in 2023. And with us, we have Joseph Holmes from the Overthinkers podcast. So go check them out if you like. One of the things I really like about this movie is that is essentially retroactively saying that
these movies have all been about Rocket the Raccoon becoming a hero. That was the coolest thing.
Which is great because he's always been my favorite character.
It was so tragic, like his whole thing. I knew his backstory already from the comics, but to see it on screen and like James Gunn is amazing, and that's why I know. That's why I know he's gonna do a great job. Like, I mean, Peacemaker is. I don't know if you've seen Peacemaker, but that show made me like a very hateable person in the movie, and then to the show just make him like a character that I love. It's just because James Gunn knows how to redeem characters. Like, he knows how to take someone that's bad and redeem them. And it's something that not a lot of writers do well. And I feel like he focuses on that a lot.
Most writers, they redeem characters by kind of trying to gaslight you into thinking that they weren't so bad.
Yeah.
Because they really don't know how to. They really, in a sense, don't really believe that really bad people can find redemption or be lovable.
Yeah.
But he really does. He actually, again, the Suicide Squad, not Suicide Squad, but the Suicide Squad, I think is like one of the best superhero movies ever made, because one of the reasons is because it legitimately takes awful and in many ways irredeemable people, and has them say, oh, we can actually make a choice to be heroic.
Yes.
As well. No, I love James Gunn. I think I've had this conversation with Nathan where I think he's one of the reasons I love him is because he's one of the few people that can do, which I've discovered is really my aesthetic, which is dark schmaltz. Like, again, he has really dark situations and characters and he places characters in those situations, but what he does that to do is to show ultimately goodness and beauty and sentimentality to conquer them. He doesn't
and redemption, because
yes.
he has, that is his focus a lot, and he has said it in his interviews. Like, I believe in redemption, and I, as a Christian, that always impacts me a lot. It's there's not a lot of people like that. Like, I mean, the discussion that Nathan and I have about Steven Universe is that a lot of people hate the fact that the show is
no
about...
spoilers. Okay, I thought you were about to spoil things for Joe. He's not done yet.
No, that is about redemption. Like, the show is about redemption, and people don't like redemption. People think that bad people should just die.
Yeah. Good. What was it? Like, good people deserve... Well, I think it was like Dudley Do-Right. Good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people, and that's the way it should be. Now, well, this is going to be interesting when James Gunn takes on Superman. How does he take on a character who is basically good and make him the center of the story? That will be interesting to see them do that.
Yeah.
So I'll say my thoughts very briefly on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. For me, it was a very uneven movie. There's stuff in it that I absolutely adore. And there's stuff in it and particularly like individual scenes and individual moments, I think are phenomenal. And I think it feels to me like a mess how it all hangs together. Like, I think that, wrapping up most of the characters' stories, takes about like 10 minutes at the end, rather than having a feeling like that's a through line throughout it. I think that because they spent so much time, telling us Rocket's backstory through flashbacks, most of again, Rocket's arc happens while he's asleep, and we don't get to maybe develop some of that or develop the world that they've invented where they say for half of the galaxy thinks of the High Evolutionary as a god. It's like, well, that's an interesting part of the galaxy and part of a thing to explore that they don't ever really do, because again, they're very kind of silo focused on certain things. I don't feel like Gamora's reintroduction and then exit felt very satisfying to me. It was kind of like, I don't know. I knew what they're kind of trying to do. It didn't quite work for me. A lot of it is really beautiful. I will say again, I legitimately wept.
Yeah.
I legitimately wept when, the ending of where Rocket is like dying and he's talking to, talking to the
otter.
other animal, the otter. And he says to her, because again, he says to her, like, I'm a mistake. I'm never meant to be anything. I was just existed to be made and thrown away. And most movies and shows that try to handle this try to say, even though you are a mistake, you can decide who you want to be. That's how they do it. And of course, that's never quite as satisfying because it never undoes the wound of believing that you're a mistake. And what they decide to do is probably one of the most Christian responses I've seen in a movie, which is it's like that there are the hands that made us and then the hands that guide the hands.
Yes.
And it was just like, I just sobbed openly in the theater because that is how you psychologically, healthily deal with, again, all of the ways in which people traumatically can feel like they were a mistake to be born is to feel like the intention for you, again, it's what the Bible does with Joseph, at the end of Genesis. It's like what you intended for harm, God used for good. In a more deep sense, cosmically, I am actually made for a good purpose. And the fact they decide to go there and even decide, again, I would have liked to see this develop more when the High Evolutionary, this is like, again, that's not a coincidence because the High Evolutionary, when he's explaining what his motive is, again, somebody says, somebody offhandedly is trying to get him to stop being a sucky leader and saying, says to him, like, for God's sake. And he said, God doesn't exist. That's why I'm here. Is this like, he also believes that that cosmically there's no purpose or reason in the universe. And therefore he has to impose it on the universe.
Yeah. And we know that that's not true because gods aren't real in this world.
Right.
Exactly. And there's an afterlife. Like that Rocket is in the afterlife. Like that. Like
so it's I think again what they teach people about why and how they can love themselves. And like, how Drax is like he's not a destroyer, he's a dad. And and that Peter, it's like, hey, you've been running from your relationships your whole life. You need to actually go back home and make amends with your grandfather's, like all of these things that are just like where truth and beauty and softness kind of triumph over evil. I'm watching like online people respond to this so tenderly and viscerally in ways I haven't seen them do in movies. I think that's just sort of the beauty of James Gunn is he can create, he can weave beauty out of ugliness in a way nobody else can.
Although to your criticism about the characters and what they felt, I think that you like it sucks that you have to, but you have to see the entirety of the Marvel universe, the Marvel movies, as the character's conclusion. Because for Gamora, her conclusion was in Endgame. That was the character's conclusion. Like in here, we are given the only reason we're introducing Gamora here is for the new Gamora is for Peter to move on.
Right.
She's not a character. She's not her own character in this movie. Like they do give her like a little bit of an ending at the end for her to like for it to feel like a conclusion, but because she's not going to be in the MCU anymore. Basically, but she already died. Like that. This is just.
What's the thing? I would have preferred almost her not to be in this one and just be like him learning to move on without the character there. That's my thing.
I agree. Like I thought she was a weird addition to this movie, but I still kind of wanted to see what they would do if she was still here.
Fair enough.
See the interactions between the team, and because I do think that they would try to interact with her.
Because and like in fairness, I think James Gunn's initial intention was for her to like be alive all the way through these movies, but then like he got taken off guard with Endgame. Like they did consult him and did ask him, and like he rolled with it. But I think when he initially like signed on for these 3 movies, he did not intend for Gamora to have that fate with
Yeah.
Endgame.
And I think he had to adjust to that.
Yeah, that's fair.
But and for what's her name? The telepath.
Mantis?
Mantis had her arc between the second movie, Endgame,
Christmas special,
and
Kevin Bacon,
and the Christmas special with and the Thor movie. Like that was her arc in there was that, and the Christmas special was kind of the ending of her arc to me. And,
which she decided to undo by just leaving at the end.
Yeah. Basically, and I think for Drax, I think the movie wanted to focus on Drax and on mainly on Rocket.
Sure,
Rocket is the main character. Drax kind of still has that thread that needs to be finished, which was becoming a dad again, because it's implied that he had a family before.
Oh, it's not just him. Yeah, he absolutely did. And no, that's great.
But what we know is that his story is not done yet, so he's gonna keep being in the show. But we needed Rocket's end of the story to be presented to us. Like, we needed to know his origin, we needed to know his end. For Star-Lord, his story hasn't ended yet either, because they're still gonna
legendary Star-Lord solo movie.
Yeah. So I feel like for me this movie was all about saying goodbye to the characters that are leaving, that already had their arc finished, and introducing like what the story has been about, which is Rocket. And that's why, like, I really loved it, and like you said as well, it made me cry all the way through, just that. But I do think that the High Evolutionary, they should have worked with that, and I agree with you that I think they lacked in kind of exploring more of him, because but he's not dead though, so they still can explore more of him as well in the future. But yeah,
I like the movie a lot. I think compared to like some of the other Marvel sequels that come out lately, it's certainly the most focused out of all of them. And I think the thing I appreciate the most about the movie is kind of this recurring theme among all these characters of learning to accept the messy reality of who they are and what they are, and not just leaving it there, but letting that acceptance guide them to newer and better places. And like, I felt like I saw that very strongly in Rocket's story arc, especially over the course of the 3 movies, because like in dealing with his identity as a raccoon. So like in the first movie, he's like he just kind of rejects that reality, being like, oh yeah, ain't nobody like me but me. Like, I don't care what you call me, I ain't no raccoon, I'm me. Which is like it's very powerful, very good, but like as the story goes on, you can see, oh, he's not just saying that for self-empowerment, he's saying that because he's kind of running away from this identity that like was steeped in so much messiness and badness thanks to the Higher Evolutionary. Because like in the second movie, you see him get so upset and offended whenever like Peter or someone calls him a raccoon, so you can tell there's a sore spot there. And that comes into a head with this movie. And I just really, really like that moment towards the climax when like Rocket finally wakes up and goes back to rescue all the animals. And then he has a face-to-face moment with all those raccoons that to me was kind of like telling him, yes, you had all this messiness in your past. Like, you've been broken, you've been like torn apart and all that. But like, this is still your identity, and this is a good, pure, and tender thing that's worth accepting. And so like, you don't need to run away from that. And when you're able to accept that, you're able to rise to be the leader you meant to be, which was exactly what happens to Rocket by the end of the movie. So that's why I really love like how that scene with him with the raccoons got immediately followed with him saying, yeah, the name's Rocket Raccoon, and then shoots guy.
Yes,
like, I thought that was
so good.
Like, that was such a good full circle to me.
That was so good. I love that moment.
Agreed.
That's the moment I wanted to say. It's like, I'm Rocket Raccoon. Like, yes, let's go. Yeah, because that is his comic book name.
Yeah.
And it's just, he's been avoiding it all this time. And for him to actually, like, finally come to, like you said, like, accepting his identity, it was incredible.
And I think it speaks a lot to like a lot of people having their identities issues nowadays, which either they're quick to cling to a label or run away from a label because of all the negative connotations. They had that label before.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
then they're kind of stuck in identity limbo because they don't know how to feel about themselves.
Yeah. And that is just accepting who you are is like it's such a big part of growing as a person.
Mhm.
And I think it's amazing, like the redemption in the in this movie was incredible. Just like
Yeah.
and like you said, it was very like the response that they had for feeling like a mistake was very Christian, very much like it like hit me to the chorus while where I was like, wow, that's beautiful. And like it goes to the fact, like I was saying with Nathan, is that you, Joseph, and the other Nathan from the Overthinkers podcast were the ones that introduced me to thinking about creativity, like thinking that since creativity came from God, that man has a way of, even if they're disconnected from God, even if they are away from Christianity, away from God, they still have a connection to those to those ideals because like basically like Nathan put it, like it's the image of God within us coming out in this in a creative way. And for James Gunn to be really focused on redemption is really interesting as a person who to what I've known, I don't think he is like
He's not a Christian.
Yeah,
he's
like yeah.
He's not a. What's interesting, James Gunn is fascinating because he's not a Christian, and he's talked about this in relation to Chris Pratt. So that's sort of James Gunn where he's kind of at with it. There's a lot about Christianity that he likes, but he doesn't like the institution and many of the beliefs about it, and so he doesn't want to be on the inside. But clearly, I mean, I think it's almost guaranteed that Chris Pratt has had some influence on him because these movies have gotten more and more explicitly Christian, as they've gotten on. And this aspect of very explicitly dealing with the best way, like you said, the best way to move forward and redeem yourself is to accept yourself at the very bottom of who you are. And to recognize that at the very bottom of who you are is something good. You have a good purpose. You were made for something like that. It's not to say at the bottom of who I am is meaningless and I can build something meaningful on top of that. It's to say, at the bottom of who I am is, as Christians would say, we were made in the image of God. Or as, Guardians of the Galaxy would say, is the hands that guided the hands that made us for some beautiful purpose, which in the case of Rocket was to be the hero of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like they're very explicit about that. And so that's a beautiful thing that James Gunn has been able to embody as part of his redemption message.
It's incredible. Wow. It's just incredible. And with that beautiful message.
Glad we brought you on, Joe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us, Joseph. And thank you for listening to the podcast. See you on the next time, guys. See you guys. Goodbye.
Bye.
Peace.